Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Planning for Long-Term Care, How a Long-Term Care Need Can Impact Your Portfolio. Not the most fun topic, and certainly one that our clients tend to avoid, but it's a really important piece of your financial planning puzzle that we take very seriously. Who are we? We are Better Money Decisions. We are proudly 100% women-led, and we focus on goals-based, holistic financial planning and wealth management for our clients. I'm Jocelyn Black. I am a senior wealth advisor along with my esteemed colleague, Susan Coe, fellow senior advisor, and we are passionate about helping our clients with that comprehensive financial planning and making sure that we are stress testing their plan success against the potential for long-term care. I'll turn it over to Susan to start with important considerations for long-term care in terms of timing, and then the really key questions that everyone considering insurance coverage needs to ask.
Thanks, Jocelyn. So like Jocelyn said, this is not maybe people's favorite topic, but it is extremely important. So hang in there with us. We're going to give you some key considerations to consider when you start thinking through, does long-term care make sense for me? One thing to keep in mind that as a company, as advisors, we are fee-only fiduciaries. And so we do not sell any products. We don't sell insurance products. We're not licensed in insurance, but we do guide our clients through this conversation, data analysis as well, so that they are equipped to make that decision of, what to think about, what they need, and, do they need this insurance product? So here's some things that I like to mention to clients when they ask me, should I even be thinking about long-term care insurance? Because it's really expensive, as we'll be going into. So family history, whether it be a history of longevity, living into your 90s and or 100s, or potentially a history of dementia, Alzheimer's, different things like that. Some people have a really strong desire to leave money behind. In that case, it may make sense to have a policy to protect that inheritance. The best time to start thinking through, does it make sense? The best time it makes sense to purchase a policy is your mid-50s or early 60s. That's the best time cost-wise to make the purchase. The asset level we usually say makes sense is about 1.5 to 3 million. If you have more than that, it's going to be more of a self-insure situation. If you have less than that, the cost of the long-term care insurance just does not make sense to cover, to protect those assets. And then lastly, and probably the most important, is peace of mind. So some people just feel more confident, more comfortable having that protection in that policy. So once you kind of come to that decision of, does it make sense to look into it? Here's some of the things you really want to be thinking about when you're looking at those specific policies. So inflation is huge. We're seeing healthcare inflation 6-7%, which is about double the regular inflation long-term. So you want to make sure you have some protection against inflation. You want premiums that remain level. I'm constantly getting emails, calls from clients saying, hey, I got my renewal notice and they doubled the rate. And then at that point in time, you need to look at it again and say, does this still make sense for me? Home health care benefits is key. A lot of people don't need the nursing home care, and they can get the care they need in the home. And so it's important to make sure that's covered. Benefit period, waiting period. Is it guaranteed renewal? Can they cancel it on you? Does the insurance company have a good reputation? You want to work with a company that's been around for a while. And does it cover dementia? Some of these policies, believe it or not, do not cover dementia. And so it's really important to make sure that your policy does. So this is just to give you a feel for the cost of long-term care. These numbers are from a couple years ago. And so, the costs today are actually going to be higher than what you see here, but it's still staggering. Over 100,000, and this is in Albuquerque, New Mexico, over 100,000 a year for a skilled nursing home. Assisted living is much less. That's where you have an apartment. They might provide a little bit of care and maybe some meals and entertainment type thing. And then, in-home care is definitely going to be the least amount for 4 hours a day. But yeah, just keep an eye on these numbers. Make sure you have a good feel for what the costs are for your area. This comes straight out of our financial planning software. So Jocelyn's going to go into more on how we use our software to help our clients make decisions. But these are the numbers that are fed directly from that software. So I am going to hand it over to Jocelyn to talk a little bit more about how this all fits into financial planning.
So our program is built to make sure that our clients are in a position to achieve their goals and cover the various budgets for those goals and maintain a comfortable lifestyle for as long as we think they're going to live without being at risk of running out of money or having their portfolio exhausted of investable assets. This does not take into account potential home equity as a last resort to tap into. That's typically what we consider to be the last resort to tap into for long-term care needs. But when it comes to the plan success score, we're stress testing against market risk, first and foremost, as well as inflation risk. But then we also need to consider the potential need for our clients' long-term care.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see here, when we are building goals for clients, we divide them into 3 categories. Basically, essential expenses, those are your basic monthly living expenses. Your home expenses, your utilities, your transportation expenses, your food, to maintain a comfortable lifestyle. And healthcare is another one of those essential expenses. And as Susan mentioned, the program has built into it an elevated inflation assumption. So whereas we typically use a 2.5% to 3% inflation assumption on other expenses, it's 6%, and that's flexible. We can potentially go higher on healthcare expenses. So we are really making sure that our clients can afford these inflating and in some cases exponentially inflating expenses over time. And then the other categories include wants and wishes, which have more flexibility, especially when we're looking at how the potential for long-term care and needing to cover that cost affects these wants and wishes expenditures that we've accounted for and hope to cover. And so what we're looking at here is the default assumed age at which a client likely will need long-term care, and that's starting at age 80. And based on national averages, it's a 2 to 3 year need to cover those long-term care expenses from age 80 to age 83. And you can see the total cost of potential long-term care is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars just for a 2 to 3 year period. And the blue bar represents a client's portfolio value without that need for long-term care. On the left-hand side, sorry. So on the left-hand side, you see the portfolio value without long-term care expenses. The green bar represents portfolio value with long-term care expenses, but without long-term care insurance. And then the purple bar represents portfolio value with long-term care expense and with long-term care insurance coverage. So we can look at how ending portfolio values are affected based on the need or not needing. And then if there is a need, whether or not our clients have the coverage that they need. And if they don't have the need, how much coverage the program estimates that they do need, and then what those approximate costs for that level of coverage will be. And then we can figure out if that's cost effective or cost prohibitive. And if cost prohibitive, then what are our plan B or plan C options? On the next slide, we're looking at the potential for a longer term, a longer need for care. And if we're talking about an Alzheimer's diagnosis, then the need for care averages between 2 to 10 years. So that is a very wide range. And that's what we're looking at here. Potentially needing care starting at age 80 until age 86 as kind of that median range with an Alzheimer's diagnosis. And then the potential costs can get over $1 million. And then we really need to consider whether or not a suitable coverage policy can be affordable and part of this plan, especially if there is a family history of deteriorative cognitive illnesses like dementia, like Alzheimer's, like Parkinson's. In my case, my father was diagnosed with early onset dementia, and it was actually just a few years after he and my mother purchased a joint long-term care insurance policy. So thank goodness they purchased it when they did, because it wasn't that far ahead of that purchase that he was diagnosed. And then he ultimately suffered from Alzheimer's and needed long-term care for a total of 5 years. And they had purchased a joint policy with a total benefit period of 5 years that he ended up exhausting. And so once he passed away, then we had to reevaluate for my mother, who is significantly younger than he was, how she was going to potentially afford and cover her future long-term care needs. So these are really important questions and potential what-if scenarios, depending on our client's situation and family histories and what's reasonable that they can afford.
Yeah, I think it's important too to point out that in this longer, 6-year scenario, the long-term care insurance doesn't even come close to covering the cost. The cost of this 6-year scenario is 1.2 million. And the benefit, this was like a 3-year policy, is about 346,000. So you can see it's still huge.
Only covers a fraction of the actual total cost.
Yep. So I think that's important to understand is if you have a longer term need, it's likely the policy won't cover even half of it.
And if there is a strong family history, then we need to get into tough questions like, which is more important, that you gain peace of mind and acquire sufficient coverage or enough coverage to give you that peace of mind, and in many cases then sacrifice some other goals and expenditures. Sometimes we have to make some tough decisions and sacrifice if we feel that there is a strong potential case for needing long-term care insurance and making sure
that's something we
it's
can help
affordable.
with the financial plan. We run various scenarios, look at different expenses and see, what your options are and what makes sense. So please, please, please reach out to us with any questions on long-term care or on any of these other financial wellness for life topics. So this is just, you've probably seen this before. It's probably just an overview of what we do. And so we want to help with any of these areas. So please reach out to us with any questions. Definitely reach out to your advisor before you purchase any type of insurance product. We want to help you with that. We want to make sure it's a good fit for you before you do that. Anything else to add, Jocelyn?
No, there are lots of resources out there, but it's really easy to get misled and to get advice from professionals posing as fiduciary advisors, but they're actually insurance agents. And so you really need to be careful who you're taking advice from, and always, always consult us, your financial advisor, to make sure, as Susan said, that whatever you're considering really is the most suitable strategy and solution for you and your family, and that it's cost effective.
Yeah, and I would just add, if you have friends that are asking you these questions, friends that are bringing up family members, feel free to send them our way. We're happy to help them as well.
And I meant to say that we also have lots of resources available. So this is such an overwhelming topic, and it's really easy to end up going down a rabbit hole if you do your own research. And so we can really help relieve you of that burden and that time suck of figuring it out on your own, and helping you navigate the vast marketplace so that you can narrow down really the most appropriate strategies for your situation.
Yes, good point. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and we appreciate you watching. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.